All right, good morning. Thought I'd do something a bit different this week. It's a bit of an experiment. Inspired by some comments I saw where a YouTuber had implied that audiobooks didn't count as real reading. That wasn't actually what she meant, but it's how some people interpreted what she was saying. So there were quite a few comments underneath the video about how audiobooks are so important, particularly when it comes to accessibility for reading. And I'm a big fan of audiobooks, even though I have no accessibility requirements myself. It's just that my concentration span can sometimes be a bit short when it comes to physical reading. So I love audiobooks because I'm always doing something else at the same time as I'm listening to the book, even if it's just walking from point A to point B. And I definitely do consider it real reading. It's one of my favourite mediums to consume a story. I'm not really here to have the debate about whether it counts as real reading or not. Obviously, I do count it as that, so end of story. Not least because oral storytelling predates written language significantly. Is the original form of telling stories and getting stories around a community. Anyway, so for this week, I'm just going to sort of challenge myself to see how many books I can get through in a week, purely via audio. I expect that of the listening time for this week, about 70% of it I would have done anyway, because it's going to be things when I'm like walking from cat clients. But by putting in this extra effort to try and listen to audiobooks at every time possible, I think it will probably be about 30% of my listening time will be that extra on top effort. But we'll see, won't we, at the end of the week. I'm making it sound as if today is Monday. It's not, it's Friday. I work in an office Monday to Wednesday, so Thursdays and Fridays are a bit more flexible for me. Today is Friday the 19th of April. In terms of my setup, I'm operating a 3-phone system for this week to make this work. I'm filming this on a phone because I'm going to be out and about a fair bit, I expect, so I don't want to take my actual camera because that looks weird, so I'm taking the phone. And then this is my actual day-to-day phone. This is what I'll be listening to the audiobooks on. And I was thinking, in terms of accurate tracking, I can't use the duration tracker on the audiobooks themselves because I tend to listen at about 1.5 speed. So I've got my work phone, my cat phone. I put a multi-timer app on it so I can, hopefully I remember to hit start, that I can track my actual listening time. I've got 3 apps that I use for listening mostly. Primarily Libby, the library app, so I've got multiple library cards connected to it because I pay for an international library card as well as some local libraries. So I've got a fairly good catalogue through that system. So that is where I listen through most of my audiobooks. I have downloaded some in advance. When I was going through my wish list, where I could view the catalogue that was available, I was kind of focusing on books that are either 10 hours or less. That's what I'd sort of consider a normal standard novel length when it's converted to audio. So I've got the next in the Ellis Peter Brother Cadfael series, An Excellent Mystery, it's called. Promising. I think that's what I'm going to start off with. I've also got The Collector by Laura Cat Young. This is one of the books I received in the End of the World Reading Club subscription box. However, it's not going to be high on my TBR because it is to do with death and mourning and grief. And there was a funeral just earlier this week that we went to. So not prioritising that in terms of my emotional well-being. I've also got The Maltese Falcon, but that is a dramatisation, which is why it's so much shorter. I'll consider it. A couple of books I have upstairs that I thought they were just on the 10-hour cusp and they were available. So I was like, okay, let's have them there as backup. So it's The Cloisters by Katie Hayes and Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn. And then for the other apps, I've got Borrow Box. So my most local library switched from Libby to Borrow Box. I don't find Borrow Box is as good, if I'm honest. I can't link multiple libraries to it, so I'm limited to what my local library has. And I don't know if they've done something to their catalogue or their licenses or something. It's just books will be unavailable, but not just for like 2 or 4 weeks, but months and months. So I don't know what's going on with that. I do also have Libro FM. I only have one audiobook on there at the moment. It's Bird's Art Life from my old Life's Library subscription. I did start listening to it just the first few minutes a couple of weeks ago, but it turned out that was also about death and mourning and grief, particularly to do with the father figure. I was like, nope. I'm trying to listen to this in between my father-in-law passing away and the funeral. It's like, oh no, absolutely not. Not at the moment. It's on my 40 before 40 list, but it might end up being the last book I read from that entire list at this rate. But we'll see how it goes. I'm not being too harsh on myself for that. And then I do have an old Audible account. I'm pretty sure there are some books on there that I have bought. I don't have the app on this phone just because since having that account many years ago, I now try and lean away from Amazon where possible. And with these other options, I just haven't installed Audible on this phone. So yeah, I've got lots of options. So that's 3 full-length audiobooks downloaded and 1 BBC dramatisation. I have absolutely no idea how many I'll get through in this week. It's not because normally I'm reading physical books and audio at the same time and I'm kind of switching between them. I've never tried to prioritise and have 100% audio before. So we'll see how it goes. In terms of other things I have to do whilst listening to all these audiobooks, today I've got 3 cats to see in the morning, 1 in the evening. I've got some freelance work I have to do, which I can just do from home, so I have my headphones on for that. And I've just got boring chores and stuff to do, like filling up on laundry liquid because my subscription didn't arrive. Anyway, that will be extra walking time to listen to my audiobook. Lucky me. In terms of later on this week, multiple cats over the weekend. We're going on holiday in a couple of weeks, so I got to do some planning for that. Normal work, relatively normal work, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Cats on Monday and Tuesday. And then Thursday, which will be the end of this week, I have a sports massage in the evening. But that's it for my calendar. So should be a fair amount of audiobook time. I tried to choose a week where I didn't have too much work and cats on. When I first put this plan in my calendar, I only had 1 cat to visit this weekend. Now it's more like 3 or 4, but never mind. Can't complain about being too busy with cats because they actually pay me, whereas this does not, so hence priorities. Okay, let's crack on. Excellent mystery. Well, 10% of the way into my audiobook and I'm heading back home, having seen only 1 cat, not 3, because my plans are already thrown into disarray. I was told that the carpenter would not be popping by today because he hadn't confirmed, and then I get a notification from the doorbell and the carpenter's here. So the other 2 cats I will have to visit as part of my evening round. So only 10% of the way into my audiobook. 35 minutes and 37 seconds, which is about 51 minutes in the progress tracker. So plan B it is then, since the carpenter arrived without confirming that he was going to be here today. I'm not mentally ready to do my computer freelance work yet, so chores it is. How exciting for you to see. In 1141, 2 monks have arrived in Shrewsbury from Winchester, where their abbey was destroyed. Now, Brother Humulus, who is very ill, and Brother Fidelis, who is mute, must seek refuge at Shrewsbury. From the moment he meets them, Brother Cadfael senses something deeper than their common vows binds these 2 brothers. As Brother Humulus's health fails, Brother Cadfael faces a poignant test of his discretion and his beliefs as he unravels a secret so great it can destroy a life, a future, and a holy order. It feels a bit weird to be eating lunch in my office, but the carpenter's downstairs, so I don't want to disturb him. For the day so far, I've read for 1 hour and 11 minutes, or listened for 1 hour and 11 minutes, however you want to phrase it, which is the equivalent of 1 hour and 42 minutes on the tracker. 21% of the way into an excellent mystery. This is only a mini update because the mystery hasn't happened yet. Nothing mysterious has happened, other than some mysterious characters. So it's a Brother Cadfael story. So 12th century Shrewsbury Abbey. Cadfael's a Benedictine monk, and he works with his friend Hugh Berengar, who's the local sheriff, to solve a series of mysteries. This is, I think, the 10th book in the series. Actually, it's on my shelf. I can have a look. Here we go. 11th. Oh, further along than I thought. Okay, so in terms of the overall story throughout the whole series of books, the civil war is still going on between Empress Maud and King Stephen. It's kind of like rumbling in the background. Shrewsbury's actually started off the book very peaceful. They've just like done a whole load of harvest stuff. They've just had their fair. Everything is fine. But everything is not fine in Winchester. In terms of the history of the conflict, they're at the point where King Stephen is in a prison in a castle. Empress Maud went to London. She was really close to being crowned queen, but then she behaved like a bit of a bitch to the lords in the city and they kicked her out. So she went to Winchester. She's trying to get the big head bishop guy to be on her side, and he said, "Yep, I'll be on your side. I'll be over to swear fealty to you in a moment." And then instead he gathered up a load of his men and supplies and locked himself in his castle in Winchester, whereupon she became very angry, understandably, and laid siege to his castle. Fighting started and fire arrows were fired into the city walls area, and the whole thing caught ablaze because it's been a very hot summer. Also caught ablaze was a local Benedictine monastery, so all of the brothers in there have had to flee, and they're sort of dispersed throughout the country, and 2 of them have turned up in Shrewsbury asking for a new home, basically. They are Brother Humulus and Brother Fidelis. Some new names they took on. Brother Humulus is, it turns out, a famous crusader. He was very important in some big battle recently, but he was severely injured to his gut. He was basically half disemboweled and half castrated. So he has got a permanent severe wound which kind of fluctuates in severity, but like if he strains himself it opens up and causes problems. So he's kind of semi-disabled. And then his travelling companion is Brother Fidelis, a much younger man, but another Benedictine monk. He is mute, and so he's been acting as caregiver and nurse to the older knight. So they've turned up in Shrewsbury. They're, somebody always, the beginning of these books, somebody mysterious always turns up and sets events in motion, but nothing overly bad has happened so far. They're just kind of enjoying harvest season, the nice weather. Everything seems to be ticking along okay. There was a tense moment where one of the brothers, who's joined because he had a failed marriage, had a moment with one of the young brothers, the Brother Rune, who's only just become a monk. But the day before he swore his ceremonial vows, there was a moment between them where the older guy was trying to hit on Brother Rune and being inappropriate, but Rune handled it very well and was just no thank you. But he looked at the older brother with pity, because Rune's a lovely kind of understanding person, and so that's probably going to cause problems later on, and the older monk is going to do something bad. Hopefully not to Rune, because Rune's really sweet, and had a tough life up until the point of joining the monastery and being healed by the saint, but that is in the previous book, so he's a character that's carried forward. So yeah, just a nice gentle little story at the moment about monks in 12th century Shrewsbury. I mean, apart from the war waging in the background, but that's been in the background for the entire book series so far, and as I said, this is the 11th. I wonder if I mean, I don't know how long the First Civil War went on for, so is it going to carry through all of the books? How many have I got left? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. I think there's 11 more, so about 22 books total. Yeah, I don't know where we're at with the chronology of the events of the war. I know how it ended. But yeah, I don't know all the steps that led up to the end. So, lunchtime and more audiobook time. Take 2 of trying to see Bruce, Milburn, go to the refill shop and loop round to Sassy. And then home. I reckon this loop of chores and cats will take me about 2.5 hours. I've read for 1 hour and 52 minutes. I didn't get very much reading done when I was doing my computer freelance stuff. I can't listen to talking and then type something different at the same time. My brain can't handle it. So I had to pause it every time that I wanted to write an email. Anyway, I'm 30% of the way into the book. What's happened? Not much. Found out a bit about Fidelius's past and how there was a woman he was supposed to marry, but he didn't because he went to become a monk. And then it turned out that she had become a nun when she heard that he wasn't going to marry her, which was a great disappointment to one of his squires who wanted to marry her instead. But anyway, that's pretty much it. Okay, time to go see some cats. 2 cats done, and I'm 52% of my way through my audiobook. The mystery is that the woman who was supposed to go and become a nun never turned up at the monastery. So we're trying to find out what happened to her, but it's been 3 years since that event. Well, today was a bit of a disaster. I started to feel ill last night and then slept really badly and then was very ill this morning. So audiobook time has been almost non-existent. I did consider writing this whole day off and extending my video plan by 1 day into next Friday. But, you know, well, this is just what real life is like sometimes. This way will be a much more accurate depiction of my audiobook progress. I did listen to about half an hour of an excellent mystery, which finished it off because I made so much progress yesterday. It was a 3-hour loop to see all the cats in the afternoon. So yeah, that got through a huge chunk of the book. It was an alright book. I gave it kind of a 3.5 star rating. It was kind of nice to have a mystery that wasn't centered on a murder mystery, but it wasn't all that mysterious. Like, as soon as it was revealed what the problem mystery was, I sort of immediately knew the solution. It's not exactly like captivating or anything, but it was fine. That puts my total reading time at 6 hours from yesterday and a bit today for an 8-hour audiobook. It's day 2 and I'm going to begin my second audiobook now, even though it's like 6:20. I think I'm just going to keep it nice and easy for myself and listen to the 3-hour audio dramatization of The Maltese Falcon. I'm never sure if these dramatizations should count as audiobooks, just because although it's classified as unabridged, it does cut out huge chunks of the book, but it's only the bits they cut out are only the kind of atmospheric parts, because they just substitute the noise instead. And obviously they cut out all the he said, she said, because they've got the voice actors. But the main gist of the story is the same. Plot, characters and such. Yeah, it might be a bit controversial, but I'm still getting the story. Just in an even different format. So one more cat house to see, and it's home for dinner. Okay, so it's day 3 of this experiment. I am exactly 50% of the way through The Maltese Falcon. As a correction to earlier, it's not a BBC dramatisation. I just kind of assumed the BBC had done it because they do everything. But no, it's the Hollywood Theatre of the Ear. So probably even less counting like a book, because they say theatre. Never mind. I'm quite enjoying it. It's strange to read nowadays because It's such a classic, like, gumshoe detective with all the crazy dames in his life, one of whom is a femme fatale, and, you know, questionable characters. But I guess it wasn't a cliche at the time that it was written. It's just the classic crime noir style. Yeah, it's still quite interesting anyway. And you just kind of have to go with it in terms of the cliches and the stereotypes and that kind of thing. So now, of course, it wouldn't be a weekend vlog if it didn't involve some DIY or home maintenance action. In this case, it is pressure washing the outdoors furniture so it can go back on the deck. My fellow homeowners will understand. Well, this is what you spend your weekends doing if you have a house. 50%, and let's go. Sam Spade is hired by the fragrant Miss Wonderly to track down her sister, who is eloped with a louse called Floyd Thursby. But Miss Wonderly is in fact the beautiful and treacherous Bridget O'Shaughnessy, and when Spade's partner, Miles Archer, is shot while on Thursby's trail, Spade finds himself both hunted and hunter. Can he track down the jewel-encrusted bird, a treasure worth killing for, before the fat man finds him? So I finished The Maltese Falcon. I really liked it, even though it was quite silly in its way. I think I'm going to give it like 4 stars, although I'm a bit torn about whether it actually deserves 4 stars, but that's more of an emotional kind of response. I did have to slow it down to 1.25 speed because the music and the sound effects are so much more important in these dramatizations, and the dialogue is a lot tighter because there's less of a narrator, so the voice actors kind of can interrupt each other a bit more naturally and talk faster. So anyway, that's the reason why the audiobook's 3 hours and 20 minutes long, and I finished it in like just under 3 hours. And it's really weird I don't feel like I don't often read crime books, which are definitely crime books but not mysteries. So there wasn't much like mysterious things to guess and figure out. It was just a bunch of crooks being crooked and backstabbing each other and lying, and you're just gonna have to go along with it and listen to these people kind of getting themselves all tangled up in a web of lies, but it was good fun. I finished that on my way between 2 cats, so then I immediately started the next book. I have started one of the 10-hour audiobooks, so it's The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. It's quite good so far. I mean, I've only just started, well, I'm 14% of the way in, after like slightly less than an hour of listening time. It's a classic dark academia, really. What can I say? There's a beautiful rich girl who's probably going to end up dead. So day 3, and I'm on my 3rd book, yeah, with a cumulative total of about 10 hours listening time at the moment, rounding up. Right. Welcome to my bathroom, or wet room, or shower room, whatever you want to call it. So this is a Bluetooth mirror, so theoretically I should be able to play my audiobook through it. I'm not convinced on its practical feasibility though, because it's really designed for playing music, so I'm going to have to slow the audiobook down and also possibly crank the volume up, but we'll give it a go. We'll see how it is. Okay, so that was a disaster. I was just coming down here to find there it is, mirror Bluetooth. When it started playing Chris's music. How am I going to do that? If I just go like this, will it? And then, come on, connect. It worked. Okay, good. I don't have to listen to that racket. Okay.
About my mother, what she did.
Hang on, let's slow down. Let's go normal speed. I'm not entirely sure how to change the volume on the mirror, so I'll have to do it here. And then...
Where she had grown up. and also about Walla Walla and Whitman, what it was like,
God, it
what
sounds
it
so
was known
weird,
for,
slow.
if we had county fairs.
Or the Wheel of Fortune, who will emerge on top and who will die. When Anne Stillwell arrives in New York City, she hopes to spend her summer working as a curatorial associate at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. Instead, she finds herself assigned to the Cloisters, a Gothic museum and garden renowned for its collection of medieval and Renaissance art. There she is drawn into a small circle of charismatic but enigmatic researchers, including Patrick Rowland, the museum's mercurial curator who specialises in the history of tarot, Rachel Mondre, Patrick's beautiful curatorial associate and sometimes muse, and Leo Bitberg, the gardener who nurtures the museum's precious collection of medicinal and poisonous plants. Anne longs for the approbation of her colleagues and peers and is happy to indulge their more outlandish theories,
What a beauty.
only to find that their fascination with fortune-telling runs deeper than academic obsession. And when Anne stumbles across a breakthrough in the form of a mysterious and previously believed lost deck of 15th century Italian tarot cards, she finds herself at the centre of a dangerous game of power, toxic friendship, and ambition.
So listening through the mirror whilst in the shower didn't really work. I couldn't follow the words. This is clearly set up for music, not clear dialogue. But it did work whilst doing my post-shower skin stuff. So that actually is probably something I'll carry on doing. It was fine. So I've been listening to The Cloisters for 1 hour and 14 minutes and I am 17% of the way through, about an hour and 47 on the tracker. It seems to be going down the occult, or it's hinting at going down the occult route, a la other dark academia books. Oh, look at my hair. Such as The Maidens, and also similar in that regard. It's got a male academic who's very charismatic, and his young female students, and a possible inappropriate relationship, but we'll see how it goes. I really didn't like The Maidens, but more because of the way that the kind of detective character went about things and some of the plot stuff and some stuff that just didn't make sense. So hopefully The Cloisters doesn't go down that route of not following kind of real life systems and behaviour. But you shall see. I am now 39% of the way through The Cloisters. It's kind of slow paced, but it's this kind of building momentum, getting, weird things going on, things getting mysterious. Lots of stuff about divination and tarot cards and weird little passion projects of the professor who's leading the summer internship program. I now think maybe he's the one who's going to die, not the beautiful woman, but we'll see how it goes. Very atmospheric, very medieval, kind of gothic gloominess in amongst the heat of the city. It does have that American thing of thinking that everything that came before 1900s is super duper old, and also these academics think it's really impressive that the main character can speak and read Latin. I would have thought anybody who studies history to that level and that depth, they should all know some Latin. It seems weird to me that they don't, and that they consider that a special skill of hers, that she can read Latin and ancient Greek. Anybody who had to study classics can do that a bit. Maybe not to her degree, but yeah. In terms of the amount of time I've been reading The Cloisters, cumulatively it comes to 2 hours and 47 minutes. And I'm, almost 4 hours into the audiobook. Don't feel like I got a huge amount of reading done today so far. I only had one cat to see on my way into work. I did listen to it for a bit of it at work because it was quite number based, so it wasn't so much word based, and I didn't have my brain trying to get all messed up. And then I didn't have any cats to see after work, so it's just kind of straight home. I did cheat on my audiobook a bit and start listening to the new Taylor Swift album, only for the last couple of roads of my route home. So
So yeah, probably only a bit more reading in bed tonight and that'll be it for the day. So I don't imagine I'll make a huge amount more progress. I think I said at the beginning of this project I wasn't sure how many books I would get through. I probably would have placed 3 as an educated guess though, and this is my 3rd. I might get onto a 4th, but I don't think I'd finish a 4th now at the current pace that I'm going.
Okay, Wednesday the 24th of April, so day 6. Oh my gosh, okay. A week's almost over and I am not as far through as I thought I might be. So I am 80% of the way through The Cloisters, which leaves about 2 hours left on it. Maybe an hour and a half at the speed that I'm reading or listening. So I think I might finish it today. I've got a normal walk to work and then I've got to see 2 cat houses on the way home. So that cumulatively might be about an hour and a half. But then I don't have a chance of making much progress tomorrow, although it is a Thursday, so I'm working from home, so maybe a bit, but not a whole audiobook. So I think the answer of how many audiobooks can I read in a week will be about 3.5, if you count The Maltese Falcon as a whole audiobook. I don't know, we'll see at the end of tomorrow, I guess.
Thought I'd stand by a pretty tree to make this little update. So I've just finished The Cloisters. I don't know what to make of it really. I probably would give it like a 3.5 stars. I don't know if I'm getting too old for dark academia. Like I've been away from academia for so long and in the real work world that I just don't find it all that impressive or interesting so much. So maybe it's because this time the academia was based around art history and divination in the Renaissance, early Renaissance. I also don't know if the audiobook experience was the best way to read the book this time. I have a real mixed bag experience with audiobooks. Sometimes I find it really absorbing because it's somebody reading me the story directly into my brain. I don't need to I don't think about it too much. I don't overanalyze. I don't stop to overthink things. It's just go straight in and my thoughts fully absorb it and fully get involved. Other times, because I have to stop and start audiobooks to do with where I'm going or what I'm, if I'm doing a particular chore or if I have to stop to deal with a cat, because I'm getting it in chunks that aren't the natural chapter breaks, then sometimes the story gets so disjointed that I kind of forget what's going on or why someone is talking about something that they're referring to something that's happened and I don't quite remember what that thing was. That kind of effect. And of course I can never predict in advance whether the book is going to be perfect for audio or if I'm going to find it too choppy stoppy. So yeah, maybe that wasn't the best medium to read The Cloisters. I mean, all I can do is read the physical book in 5 years time and then I'll be able to judge. Once I've forgotten the plot, then I'll be able to judge whether it's a better format or not. In the meantime, I've still got some time left on this experiment, so I've started listening to a book that's not actually on my TBR, but I keep seeing recommended at work and people talking about it in a work context, so I feel like I should read it, which is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Kimmerer. I'm actually, though, cheating slightly by listening to the young adult version of Braiding Sweetgrass. That is because I've heard that the standard version is quite scientific, and I'm not a scientific person, and I also kind of assumes that you know a bit about American plants, and I know nothing about American plants, so I thought I'd ease myself in by listening to the young adult version. It's 8 hours on the app. So The Cloisters was 10-hour audiobook and I listened to it in 8. So the audiobook for the young adult version is 8 hours. I think the adult version is 10. Hopefully that'll be more of a entry level style of writing and approach to the biology aspects and the kind of plants, while still covering what everyone loves about it.
So it's the final day of the challenge that I set for myself and things are not exactly going to plan. Started off the day fine on my walk into work via a regular client's house. I was listening to Braiding Sweetgrass. I'm not entirely sure the format works in an audiobook style rather than written, but I was making progress, getting on with it.
I'll explain more about that format issue later, but it was all going fine. And then I was part of the way through the workday and I got a message from a friend saying that her cat, who is also my cat client, was hit by a car last night and they found out this morning that he'd passed away and been taken to a local vet. And it just sucks so much. And so much of this basically since last October, I just feel like there's been a constant chain of bereavement and death, mostly through cats, but a few humans as well. And it's just pummeled me in the heart, basically. I was very upset. And although I am upset about this individual particular cat, there's also an element of, in terms of the crying, it's an element of, this is the straw that broke the camel's back. Like, there's just been so many of them. I'd say at least 6. I haven't counted, but I'd say at least 6 since July or August. And it is an occupational hazard. Like, a lot of my cats' clients are either elderly or they need medication for something, and that's why people hire a cat sitter rather than just asking the local teenager or their neighbour or something. It's because you want the reliability of the cat getting their medication at the right time, and somebody checking that the cat's come home, or that kind of thing. So it's kind of a self-inflicted misery, but doesn't change the fact that it hurts. Will not cry. And I do get very fond of them, even when they're clients. And the owner was a friend of mine as well. So it's particularly like, So I left work a bit early. I didn't listen to my audiobook on the way home though, because I just wasn't in the headspace for particularly non-fiction, and in this format, you really have to be paying attention. And I just was too upset. So on a 7-day experiment, that's 2 days lost to real life problems like either illness or bereavement. Oh well. Like I said, I'm not rejigging the days because I do want this to reflect like a real week, even if it's not a standard week. Like, I don't get ill very often. Just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. In terms of what I did get through for the audiobook, Braiding Sweet Grass. So it's an 8-hour audiobook in total, and I got through 19%, which is about an hour and a half. I don't have my timing phone with me, but I think it was slightly less than an hour on the timing app. Like I said, with the format, it's a bit strange for audio because the way the information is presented, it's very much like an academic textbook. So you have a heading, which is usually a plant name, and then a bit of text. Often it sort of starts off quite scientific, and then the author, Robin Wall Kimmerer, blends that in with either personal anecdotal information or myths from First Nations mythology. So that is a bit more story based, that mid-section, and then it ends with either some questions to think about or a call to action, and that's where it is more focused towards young adults, because it will say, like, as a young person, question. I think I might try and get my hands on a copy of the physical adult version of the book to see if it follows that same format, just because I'm finding it like listening to a textbook, and that's slightly weird. I still got a bit more listening time today though, because I've got to go back to the client that I saw this morning and do all their evening routine. So rather than trying to carry on with the non-fiction, I'm not officially DNFing it, I'm just stopping it for now. I was looking at fiction books I could listen to that aren't about death, preferably. In terms of the ones I already had on my Libby app, so there was The Collector by Laura Cat Young, which is to do with depression and grief, and it's a dystopia about people having their grief taken away by a government agency. So I'm going to listen to that. I also have Sharp Objects by Gillian Flynn, which is about murder and death, more death. That's, presented, it's a thriller, a dark thriller. It's not sort of realistic death and grieving, but still in that general vicinity. So then I looked at my saved audiobooks that either are representative of books in my physical TBR, but I was also willing to look beyond that because apparently they're all about death. So I've downloaded Death on the Lusitania by R.L. Graham. That is a murder mystery, so obviously death again, but because it's kind of written in the style of Golden Age murder mystery, I'm hoping it's not like grief, upsetting death. And then veering off the TBR, I kind of thought, who is an author that I would like listening to, and the stories are like cozy and nice. And what came to mind was T. Kingfisher. I had intended to download the third book in the Paladin series, but there's a waitlist at the moment from my library. So I looked at her other books, and Thornhedge was available. It's 4 hours. I don't think it's abridged. I think it's just a novella. So those are my options now. I might go with Thornhedge just to have, a palate cleanser. And because I think 4 hours, I might finish it by the end of the day. Cats aren't very far away, but there's a little bit of walking to and fro. And it's kind of fairy tale based from what I can see, like a Sleeping Beauty retelling. So hopefully, I don't think anybody dies in Sleeping Beauty, do they? She just falls asleep. Maybe the big evil baddie. It depends whether she went on the Disneyfication of her fairy tale or the truly dark, grim Brothers version of the fairy tale. That's where I'm at. I'll probably do a summary tomorrow once I've had my thoughts marinating a bit more, and I'm not feeling so glum. Thornhedge is the tale of a kind-hearted, toad-shaped heroine, a gentle knight, and a mission gone completely sideways. There's a princess trapped in a tower. This isn't her story. Meet Toadling. On the day of her birth, she was stolen from her family by the fairies, but she grew up safe and loved in the warm waters of fairyland. Once an adult, though, the Fae ask a favour of Toadling: return to the human world and offer her blessing of protection to a newborn child. Simple, right? But nothing with fairies is ever simple. Centuries later, a knight approaches a towering wall of brambles where the thorns are as thick as your arm and as sharp as swords. He's heard there's a curse here that needs breaking, but it's a curse Toadling will do anything to uphold. So, the week is over. Audiobook week done. Listening to Thornhedge as my final book was definitely the right choice to make. It definitely went down the slightly grimmer, darker side of fairy tales, but it was still light enough and entertaining enough and not upsetting. So, all good. So let's summarise the week. How many audiobooks can I read in a week? About 4. Or maybe 3, really, if you're only counting a standard full-length audiobook. So first up for the week was An Excellent Mystery by Ellis Peters, book 11 in the Brother Cadfael murder mystery series. I gave it 3.75 stars in the end. It wasn't one of my more favourite in the Brother Cadfael stories. It was kind of nice not to have it centred around a murder mystery, just to make it a bit different from the others, but I didn't find the mystery itself all that engaging. It took a long time for the mysterious element to be introduced to the plot, and then shortly after it was introduced, I knew what the solution was. I also wasn't totally convinced about the reasons why the missing nun did what she did. This might be a kind of motivation which would make sense at that time period, just doesn't to modern minds. So I'm not marking it down too much for that, because I can just kind of write it off as being like, oh, it's a historical book. They did things differently back then. Next up was The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett, a classic crime noir. There's the hard-boiled detective and the femme fatales and the crazy dames and some characters behaving very much like racial stereotypes. There was also no sympathetic characters. Everyone, it was just a bunch of crooks doing crooked things. Even the detective character, you weren't very sympathetic to him because he was so unemotional and direct to the point. He didn't faff around, which I liked. I also quite liked the ending, which I know some people really don't. In terms of the Falcon itself, I wish it had ended slightly differently. I don't want to give you a spoiler, but that was a bit like meh. But in terms of the relationships in the books and how that ended, I was quite pleased that people got what was due to them. That's all I'll say without being too spoilery. And I gave it 4 stars. I can see how, as a classic, some of the writing and the portrayals would sit badly with people nowadays. But again, you just have to be like, it's of its time. Then next up was The Cloisters. Quite a disappointment, that one, actually. I think maybe I like my dark academia books when they're more focused around languages rather than art history. Maybe. This was quite a lot to do with tarot and divination, and that's what they were studying, the sort of historic examples of that. So it brought into question lots of things to do with like fate and predetermination and taking fate into your own hands and how much you can influence it. Maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, maybe not. But did seem like one of the characters was using fate as an excuse for what she did, which was annoying. And some things that I found quite strange, like, so this all takes place in a museum, so it's the arts and culture sector, and they're all like, middle class or upper class, and that's the same sort of bubble of work that I belong to, and it's just like, these people are not that, like, realistic, or I don't know, I found it hard to take them seriously. And they all smoke cigarettes, which I found weirdly off-putting. Maybe it's an American thing? Like, do people still smoke cigarettes in America? I feel like none of my friends do. There's about 40 staff members where I work, and I can probably count on one hand the number of people who smoke. And it's mostly the young box office team because they're young and beautiful and they don't yet realise that cigarettes will ruin that. But they'll quit eventually. Everyone else has. I don't know, I found it really weird how much they all smoked. And it wasn't particularly used as a plot device, other than allowing people to be in certain locations. I don't know. It's just a weird little thing that stuck with me. And I gave the book 3.5 stars overall. Because, it was just a bit blah, a bit meh. And then final and fourth book was Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. Not actually one of the books from my TBR, but as I said before, I needed something to take a break, something nice and simple and not involving death too much. This is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and I wouldn't exactly describe it as a cozy fantasy because it was on the darker side of things, but it had elements of T. Kingfisher's style of fantasy writing, where she just writes knights and paladins as very endearing, lovable characters. But the main character is actually a fairy called Toadling, and she was great. And so I gave Thornhead 4.25 stars overall. In terms of the reading experiment itself, a bit mixed. As I said before, the points where I was listening to books, and I would do that way anyway, quite long stretches of time when walking from one cat client to another, and those were fine, great, but then because of this experiment I was also kind of making myself listen in situations where I wouldn't normally, because it's only a short chunk of time and it just makes the story quite choppy and makes it harder to get back into the story each time I start the next clip. I listened to it whilst doing chores, doing some work, little errands, like posting my vote. That was this week. I listened to it a bit during cat work. When else did I listen to it? I also listened to it like just in bed when I'd normally be reading a physical book. That was a bit strange because I'm so used to only listening to audiobooks whilst doing something else, that to just sit there listening was slightly weird. And that did also run the risk of me falling asleep during the tracks. So my average rating was 3.87 stars, which is higher than my average for the year so far through all formats. Oh, I completely forgot to mention that although I was looking at the story graphs, so I was looking at finished books, and it was those 4, but I also got about 20% of the way through Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. In different circumstances where I wasn't doing this choppy reading style, and I hadn't been feeling glum from lots of death, then I'm sure I would have got through that book fine and enjoyed it more
and being able to engage with it more. That's the thing with non-fiction. You do kind of have to pay more attention and really engage with what you're being told. So I will finish that, but it just wasn't during this week due to life circumstances. So yeah, I will continue some things that I started during this week, like listening to audiobooks through the mirror whilst I wash my face after a shower. That I found actually quite a good chunk of time to listen to the books. But I will be abandoning listening to them when doing very short chores, or probably during work where I'm switching between number work and words work. But I'm still a big audiobook fan. I had a good time this week. I had some great books. No 5 stars, but I feel like I'm getting pickier with my 5 stars. I don't know, maybe. And I'm still believe that listening to audiobooks is reading, is real way of consuming the book. And I don't think anyone will ever convince me otherwise. Thanks very much for joining me this week. I hope you have a good week coming up.